Guys, instead of making all these dumb one-liner suggestions without even like attempting to go more in depth and elaborate on stuff, can you at least put in some effort to like talk through your thought process and at least try to justify why you want to make certain amendments? And then this guy is like,
And maybe merge 371 and 374 into a dual loop feeder 373.
and okay, what the hell is dual loop feeder? Just call it an Intratown or a Townlink. You know, when they say maybe, the fact is that they are just randomly throwing out this suggestion and they're not even like sure of it themselves. But you guys really need to stop this kind of thing. This is one concept that is some of you for some reason just aren't able to grasp. So you have a bus interchange, and let's say you have a west loop and then you have an east loop. Okay, so typically what happens with a Townlink and Intratown, I can't believe I even have to do this video, is that you go one round of west loop, then the bus crosses over to the east loop, and then there will be a layover. After the layover, where passengers are allowed to stay on board, then it'll go back to the west loop, go to the east loop, and then when it reaches the east loop again, it'll change to a T. So back then, for SBS it was T, and then for SMRT it was E. Y'all remember this era, right? 911E, 307E, 912E, 913E, 811E, and 812E. So basically, after the T trip, it'll terminate. And the thing about the T or the E trips in the past is that they do not discriminate between like west loop, east loop, north loop, south loop. If there is a T or an E present, it means that the bus service will terminate inside the interchange without going to the other loop in the context of like Townlinks and Intratowns. So you technically, in this case, you could run a T on the west loop as well. As long as the passengers, they see a T or a E, they know that they cannot go to the other loop with it. And because there is this kind of like crossovering and the kind of layovering and stuff like that, if something happens along the west loop that causes every single bus to be delayed, the east loop would get impacted. And the same thing goes by like, if the east loop gets impacted by something bad, services along the west loop, they will be disrupted as well. Like all the buses are stuck along the east loop, they're not able to cross over to the west loop. And to mitigate this during peak hours, yes, you can run all the T trips or the E trips in the past, but in today's context, let's just say, because you guys apparently are not able to grasp concepts properly, okay, fine, I'll just say T trips. Then you will have to resort to spamming T trips along one loop and possibly spamming T trips along the other loop, which again, effectively you would be running something like 912, 912A, 912B. Except that this isn't really like a service with dedicated departures, it's just, I mean, it's kind of like dedicated as well, but like they intentionally run the T trips, but it's not as fixed as like A or B. They can run as many T trips as they want. This kind of thing. The most prominent example of services being disrupted is that in the past, you know, Woodlands Checkpoint, and even up till today, they all affect 911, 912, 913's West Loop. So to mitigate the reliability of the entire service, you get my point. It's like you have to run more T trips. Like, okay, back then it was E basically, but now obviously there is no such thing as like 912E, 912T anymore in today's context. So it'll be 911T, 913T on the east loop, and the T can appear on the west or the east loop. It just depends on like which side needs the bus more. And not just that. When you want to make an intratown, you have to or townlink, you have to justify that passengers along one loop legitimately want to travel to the other loop and vice versa. And ideally, it's not a must, but when you run an intratown or a townlink, ideally, both loops have to have like more or less equal amounts of like demand. Like basically 307, it only runs single deckers. I know they deployed bendy buses before at some point in time, like as cameos, but the north loop of 307 has to be, the demand has to be like somewhat the same as the south loop of 307. The same thing goes for like 291. Although 291 has a little bit of imbalance, same for this one, there is also a little bit of imbalance. Same goes for all these bus services, 358, 359, even for this one. And this one. The reason why 912 was kind of split into A and B, because there was more demand along B as opposed to A. There's this kind of imbalance, so they kind of, yeah. And then 913 as well. So what makes you think that it is okay to run a townlink what am I trying to say? To merge one part of the route whereby the buses can get full to door versus another part of the route whereby sometimes it's empty. During peak hours, it gets a little bit more full, but it's not full to the point whereby it'll be like 371 full to door. See, I even drew the box bigger because this one has more demand. This one doesn't really have demand throughout the day. This one, it's inconsistent. I'm not saying there's nobody taking the bus service. I'm just saying the demand is very time dependent and very, very inconsistent. Whereas this thing, it's consistently high. When you have this kind of imbalance, obviously it's going to impact the reliability of the entire bus service that you're like, when you link this one and this one into one consolidated service, it will affect the reliability because you have one end that doesn't have that many passengers, another end that has a lot of passengers. Obviously, you need more buses. Like, as opposed to running like just one feeder and one feeder, if you want to run an intratown and a townlink, it is quite resource demanding. And I can even illustrate with a few examples. So 291, it serves Darul Gufran Mosque. So people along the eastern loop, okay, there is like street 32, 33, 23, 21 as well. And then there is this side as well. You're gonna have to guarantee that people along this eastern loop of the route, they want to access places like this. And the mosque is one example. There's also like a community club near Avenue 3 or something along those lines. You have to justify that, or maybe schools as well, like Pasir Ris Secondary, for example. Yeah, you have to, and then there's like Neon Secondary on the other side of the loop, along this side of the route. But yeah, you have to justify all these sorts of things. And then from the western end of the route, you have to justify, vice versa, you have to justify that people want to access the eastern end of the route, be it a school or a polyclinic or whatever amenities there are here. That's the reason why 291 is, they merged two feeder services to form one townlink back then. Intratown is basically Trans-Island or SMRT's way of branding it. So yeah. I don't know where the term dual loop feeder came from. Just say townlink, man. And then for 293, it's also the same. People want to access our Tampines hub from the western end of the route. And likewise, people from the western end of the route, they want to access all these places, you know. So again, the whole purpose of a townlink, it's to bridge the gap between the east and the west loop. And you have to guarantee that there is demand. If not, you're definitely not convincing the higher ups that this kind of like townlink arrangement is worth it. Like, identify the places, there is this, there is this, there is this entire area where there are lots of amenities and stuff like that. I do know that sometimes, like in the case of 307, they also merged it to become a townlink. Like like 222 as well, for the sake of convenience, but that one's another story. Most of the Townlinks, they are designed with purpose. When you're talking about 912 and 913, you have to guarantee that people want to access this place called what? Food Court, Admiralty Place, CC, NPC, HDB Kampong, Admiralty, where there's like a hawker center on the second floor, I think, sports court. You have to guarantee that they want to access like all these areas. And vice versa, 911, 912, 913, you need to guarantee that there will be demand going over to the checkpoint. I mean, that's self-explanatory, right? But this is the whole logic behind why you even introduce Townlinks in the first place. And for 307, you have to like justify that there will be demand from the South Loop all the way to somewhere along UT Square, UT Point, or wherever. And that those people would most likely take it back to like the Southern Loop as well. It's the same for Pasir Ris, like for 358, 359, as well as I can even use Service 3 as an example because it used to be 357, which was a merger of two feeders as well. Like Casuarina Primary, I don't know what this school is, Pasir Ris Crest Secondary, and then there are amenities along Pasir Ris Drive 4 and Pasir Ris Drive 1, Loyang View Secondary, White Sands Primary, Hai Sing Catholic School temporary, but it'll shift back to over here. Then Pasir Ris Primary, Loyang Point, which is where 359 currently loops, and then Service 3 also goes near here as well. And there's this AWWA home. I don't know what AWWA home stands for, but yeah. And if they want to go to the mosque, they could technically walk from Service 3's bus stops to cross over to the mosque as well. And then on the western end of the loop, there is like Parkview Primary, there is like TMJC Meridian Primary, and there is also this Pasir Ris West Plaza, Church of the Divine Mercy, stuff like that. You have to guarantee that they want to travel from east to west and west to east. And you also have to more or less guarantee that both loops, the demand is like more or less stable or like close enough. Not like one end having a lot of demand and the other end not having much demand at all. I know 358, the western loop isn't real. It's more of a history thing, and I think they were just trying to like make the western end more useful so that they can link it to the eastern end in the case of 358. Yes, I know 358 has a little bit of imbalance, but it's not really that bad as compared to like when you try to do it with 371 and 374. And 298, the Townlink arrangement, how do I put it? It's like, it was an intermediate step before it got officially extended to Tampines North Interchange, but they decided to skip the intermediate step and just extend it to Tampines North Interchange at one go. But yes, even 298, there are plans to make a Townlink. So in essence, Tampines North, Tampines, as well as Tampines West, you need to justify that there will be people taking from west to north if you want such a Townlink in that sense. Now, why does this not work for Sengkang? 371 demand is absolutely high and consistent throughout the day, especially during peak hour. 374's demand is a lot more inconsistent. It is also primarily because Sengkang West hasn't really developed a lot. Like, there is still quite a bit of empty land over here at Anchorvale Crescent, and then over here it's still mostly underdeveloped. And because of that, the demand for 374 hasn't really stabilized yet. There is demand during peak hours, it's not consistent enough throughout the day to warrant the west and the eastern ends linking together. Like, 374 right now is just purely residential, and the only way that you can justify having 374 is that if people along the eastern end of the route, they want to access Sengkang General Hospital, Sengkang Medical Center, but technically you could walk from Sengkang to over here. So When they plan routes, they take all of these into consideration. And if it's not worth, let's say there is just not enough demand to justify, like from people from the East Loop, they want to travel to over here, like either this pair of bus stops or this pair of bus stops. And in fact, this thing is like literally just walking distance from Compass 1 all the way till here. I know it's for the elderly, okay, but again, you need to justify overall. It's not like, oh, the elderly are complaining that like, oh, it's really inconvenient from over here to over here. Sengkang in itself, it's a new town. It's not like one of those towns whereby there's an aging population, so that there is no like immediate need to make a town link within Sengkang. Even 372, I wouldn't consider it a town link because it's like so short. It's just like this and like this, but yeah. And not just that, you have to justify that whoever is living along the western end, there's still not that many people that they want to travel to like Rivervale Primary or whatever there is along Rivervale Crescent. So because this is technically walking distance, as of this point in time, it is hard to justify merging 371 and 374 into a East Loop and a West Loop feeder. Not just that, I would foresee them reverting to spamming whatever new service you're gonna call it, T's along the eastern end of the route, which kind of defeats the purpose of having an intratown in the first place if your intratown is like gonna spam so many T's. It'll end up like 912, 912A, 912B. And at that point, you might as well just leave 371 and 374 separate. Simply because there is way too much imbalance between the West Loop and the East Loop. You see the way I explain stuff versus the way you guys explain stuff. It's like,
Maybe I should merge this one.
and you don't even give like reasons. You're just saying,
Maybe because I just want 373 to exist.
guys, you need to stop thinking like, you guys have to like at least give it some thought, even if it's just one or two reasons. Okay, fine. Right now, you're not even giving any reason. You're like,
Oh, I just want it to merge.
and unfortunately, it's the same people who try to separate TIPS era and SMRT era because they have like massive OCD. I'm able to say that because I actually suffer from OCD. And my takeaway from this video is that please think before you type.